Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. I am Jennifer Schurter. I am your hostess with the mostest here of Real Estate Recess, and back at you today. It's Thursday, April 18th, 2024. It's a beautiful day outside, and I'm excited to bring you some amazing and really interesting topics that I think anybody out there who's following the real estate space or is just generally curious, we're going to bring some really interesting topics to you today. I'm really excited. I've got my tea. Leave me a comment. Let me know what your favorite tea is. If you're a tea person like I am, this is honey lavender. It's like a stress relief relaxation tea. Always like to have my tea during these things. But I've got a really great guest for us this week. Love to bring my friend Jessica Scolastico here to the stage. She is a great lender with CMG Home Loans, and I'm really excited to have you here with me today, Jessica.
Thank you for having me, Jen.
Yeah, so why don't you tell the people, give the folks your elevator pitch, who you are, and all that jazz.
Absolutely. Well, my name's Jessica Scolastico. I'm with CMG Home Loans based in the Portland metro area, licensed in Oregon, Washington, and also Arizona. So I've been in the mortgage lending business for about 10 years. Before that was all customer service. So for me, I love helping people really understand the mortgage process. I think it's really important that you know when you're going through the biggest purchase probably of your life, that you understand all the ins and outs, all the ways to leverage your money and your funds so that your mortgage works for you.
Awesome. And yeah, and it's so important. I tell people all the time that you have your real estate agent and you have your
Mhm.
lender, and then you've got
Mhm.
your title and escrow person once you are in contract on a property. And and honestly, that's your dream team. And
Mhm.
who you work
Mhm.
with really does matter. And so
Definitely.
being it's because if those folks are going to be ushering you into this major transaction, like you say, for a lot of people, it's the
Mhm.
biggest transaction most people will ever make in their entire life. So it's really important to make sure you have the right people on your dream team to make that
Yes.
happen.
Yes, definitely. And I think what people don't necessarily understand is that there are so many different lenders, there's so many different real estate agents out there.
Mhm.
But what you said was so true. It's a team. We have to work together. We have to be able to communicate really well. And we have to be kind of in lockstep throughout the entire process so that it goes as smoothly as possible.
100%. Yes, 100%. So, yeah, so we've got a great agenda for you today that we're going to be talking about. So leave us a comment. You'll like the video. Don't forget to hit the bell to be notified and subscribe. And you'll see these videos. I'm live every single Thursday. So if you like this kind of stuff and you want to stay in tune with what's going on, follow along. But our agenda today. So we're going to talk about a handful of things
Mhm.
that we learned at an event this week called the KFA Summit, and it's a real estate event. But there are some things in there, and I know Jessica will agree, which is why we're talking about it, that we think were important for anybody who not even is just necessarily following the real estate industry or is planning a home purchase, but it's also kind of a civic thing with what's happening in government and things that are being passed and different things going on that will ultimately affect everybody, to be honest.
Absolutely. I loved listening to developers because what we don't hear even in the residential world is about commercial developments that are happening and what's the latest intersection.
Mhm.
How is the urban growth boundary moving? So I thought it was great to hear from three different developers and hear that we're really kind of at the peak of where the developments for residential and commercial are, and that's really because of a lot of the interest rates.
Yeah.
The Fed rate being the highest that it's at right now is really holding banks back from giving more money to development. So it was interesting to hear that really once everything that's built is built and slated
Mhm.
already in 2024, we're not going to see a lot of new housing
Yeah.
starts until maybe 2026.
Yeah, and we're going to dig into that. We're going to talk a little bit more about what that could look like. To tease the topic of today's conversation, will there be a
Mhm.
housing market shortage? So we're definitely going to come to that. We're going to talk about something too that's interesting. Now, this is coming from Washington, but as a lot of you know, as goes Washington, so goes Oregon, or so goes California, so goes Oregon and Washington. The West Coast tends to follow each other
Mhm.
in that way. So interesting developments happening on the Washington side that just across the river that could ultimately be decided here could impact a lot of things. So we're going to talk about that as well. We're
Mhm.
also going to talk about, you know, what a buyer is going to actually need to plan and prepare for if they're
Mhm.
looking forward to purchasing this year or in the coming years, in light of a lot of these things that we're going to be talking about.
Mhm.
And yeah, and we'll have some fun along the way. So why don't we just dig in and get started? So KFA Summit, this was an event in Vancouver. I wasn't able to stay to see Ryan Serhant, but a lot of folks know who he is. Did you see Ryan
Mhm.
Serhant
You know
talk
what?
at
I
the
had
end?
to leave as well too.
Darn. Darn, and it was too bad because I was looking forward to seeing him speak.
Mhm.
But anyway, I did see
Mhm.
him, when I was on the phone outside.
Oh, did
He
you?
I did. I was within 10 feet of Ryan Serhant. We were breathing the same air.
It's
I
huge.
but I was on the phone and I wasn't gonna go up and be one of those weird, annoying people that was like, take a picture, a selfie, and I'm not gonna do that. But I'm disappointed I did not get to
Mhm.
see him speak. But
Mhm.
so one of the things that was really interesting, and we teased this earlier, was the panel of
Mhm.
developers
Mhm.
and the interesting topics they brought to the table. So maybe in a nutshell, let's summarize that for
Mhm.
folks so they have kind of a 10,000-foot view of what we heard at the KFA
Absolutely.
Summit.
Absolutely. So, in Clark County, which is actually developing probably just as fast as the Portland metro area, you had your top three developers that were there. They've developed the downtown waterfront. They've helped develop Camas downtown as well too. And so there's a couple more projects that are slated for, I believe it was 192nd and
Mhm,
SR
mhm,
500. So what they were saying is that interest rates are still at an all-time high. And yes, that's affecting mortgage rates on the residential side, but it's also affecting commercial developers. And projects just aren't penciling like they should be anymore. So really after these last few developments, whether it's new neighborhoods that are going in the Camas and North Vancouver I-5 corridor area, there's not going to be anything else. And I thought
mhm,
that was such, like you said, a 10,000-foot level of how interest rates really are affecting more
mhm.
than just mortgage buyers.
Yeah, it's affecting the consumer market right now.
Mhm.
It's, that anytime those interest rates go up, I like to use this analogy of a hallway full of doors, and each of those doors has an interest rate number on them. And those
Mhm.
doors open when a certain buyer group can afford at that rate, and they
Mhm.
close when we surpass that rate. So
Mhm.
as rates go up, the doors in the hallway close and the
Mhm.
buyers are in their waiting rooms waiting for rates to come down. And
Yes.
then as those doors open, we get more buyers into the market. But
Mhm.
so yeah, so obviously there's a lot of buyers on the fence or in their waiting rooms waiting for rates to come down so they can afford it based on that. But it's also, if you think about anybody who's a builder, who's a contractor, developer building these new construction neighborhoods,
Mhm.
um, their costs are really high right now and the funds aren't as available. Isn't that, I mean, that's what I understood. Is that
That's
like,
also what I
yeah,
understood too, because
yeah.
a lot of banks just aren't putting the money out there. Why would a bank lend out at a higher interest rate to a developer when they know that's ultimately going to tie up more funds for them to be
Mhm.
able to offer mortgages, small business loans, things like that? So, yeah, the banks just don't have an appetite right now for bigger developments because I think a lot of people are just waiting to see what happens to the economy. We're in an
Mhm.
election year. Whichever way that falls, it's going to be a roller coaster, I think, for the next 12 months or so. So I think it's a wait and see situation right now.
Sure, absolutely. And that's an interesting thought because like you say, just because this is happening on the Vancouver, the Washington side of the metro, that interest rates affect everybody everywhere. It's not just Washington. So you could
Mhm.
take that scenario of what's happening in Clark County and apply
Mhm.
that anywhere on the Oregon side and anything in our side of the metro, Clackamas County, Portland Metro, North Willamette Valley, everywhere. This is not
Yeah.
just up there. So, and an interesting thing we talked about when we were chatting the other day was all the new developments that you see,
Mhm.
that's what's being built right now is what's permitted, what the
Mhm.
builders and developers are planning for, and then after that, that's it.
That's it. And we're in such a housing shortage, and I nerd out on the housing supply.
Yeah,
You
same.
can
I
look at
love that
okay,
stuff.
good. You can look at things like housing starts, which are essentially pulled permits for new houses, whether it's small developments or large developments.
Right.
Those are, I believe, at a 15-month low as of March
Wow.
2024, which really kind of tells to the story that we're hearing it, like you said, on the Clark County area, but we're also seeing it in the Progress Ridge area. We're also seeing it in Canby, where you're
Mhm.
located. We're
Yeah.
seeing a lot of developments happening, but there's not new developments coming behind that. So we're already behind in shortage, I believe about 2.5 million units as a nation.
Mhm.
And Portland absolutely is one of those markets where we have an urban growth boundary. We're not just building new subdivision after new subdivision. So the housing supply is going to be what really keeps demand and
Mhm.
appreciation at an all-time high.
100%. I mean, months of inventory is something I talk about a lot on these videos and these live streams I do.
Mhm,
And March, so the RMLS for the Portland Metro, our inventory months is 2.3. And the rule is that we talk about a lot, 6 months
mhm,
or less of inventory means it's a seller's market. I
mhm,
went back last week and we looked at data going all the way back to pre-COVID. We've
mhm,
and I even remember back when we bought our house in 2016, just remembering the numbers. We've been in a seller's market for years. That's not changed because all of that supply that was on the market, that glut from the crash years was taken, was eaten up, and we've not recovered in
mhm,
building since then. So to further cause more issues, there's where the builders aren't getting the loans to continue the new construction, the housing starts,
mhm.
that could signal a real problem in 2025 and beyond, or until
Absolutely.
interest rates come down to where the banks are gonna start releasing more money.
Absolutely. You also have the additional pressure of your millennial generation really reaching peak home buying right now.
Mhm.
When we joke that we're elder millennials, or I joke
Yeah.
that I'm an elder millennial.
Yeah, me
And
too.
okay,
Yes.
good.
Even though it sounds I joked with somebody on one of these a while back that elder millennial sounds so old
It
and,
does.
like, decrepit, and, like, I don't feel like I'm that old and decrepit.
I don't feel
It's
like
like
I'm the
yeah,
eldest of my generation, but I guess
right.
I am.
I guess so.
But you think about millennials that are hitting anywhere between 34 and 37 right now. That's really peak home buying. First time home buyers have aged up significantly, just like you said, since the housing market crash back in 2007, 2008. People are really putting it on hold a little bit longer. They're also starting families a little bit later. So that's
Mhm.
why we see that first time home buyer gap kind of go up. But we have millions of people that are in that age bracket that are ready to buy, and affordability is really putting a lot of things on hold, along with just not having the right property for them.
Mhm. 100%. So we get to our outlook here. So
Mhm,
everything that is currently out there, new construction,
mhm,
we get to 2025. Based on this information, I think that we're going to continue to see if rates come down because it takes time for that flywheel to get going again. It
absolutely.
doesn't just happen overnight because
Mhm,
these developers have to access the funds, they need to apply for the permits. There's all the other steps in the process that it can take a really long time depending on the municipality or the county or whatever, whoever they're having to get permits through. Every county's
absolutely.
area is different,
Mhm,
and time and money and all these other things that have to happen takes a long time for that process to get going. And so you think about a potential slowing of construction building of things happening on the construction side.
mhm.
We're going to get to 2025, 2026, and I think we're going to see a shortage of homes
I absolutely agree with
again.
you.
Like a
Absolutely.
legitimate shortage, not just from COVID years where we had a lot of transactions and things were moving so quickly that it seemed like there was nothing on the market.
Mhm.
But I really think we're going to see, and if rates come down on the consumer side, I
Mhm.
think that we're going to see another another just like we saw before, and a massive price growth, and that's my prediction.
Well, and it's an incredibly accurate prediction because it's based just on supply and demand and simple math. Just like what your analogy of the hallway with interest rates and doors opening and shutting. Once that 7% door shuts
Mhm.
and 6%, mid 6% opens, you're going to have more people get out there.
Yes.
Once that 6% door closes and 5% opens, you're going to see a massive onslaught of buyers coming onto the
Mhm.
market, that pent up demand is, they're ready, they're waiting, they've been saving, they've been living in an apartment that's well beneath what they can afford. So hopefully they have that money saved to be able to put down an additional 10,000, 20,000, because we know that there's just going to be so much buyer competition for the limited
Mhm.
inventory that's out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting too is just the feedback that we get from people a lot is we talk a lot as your industry, my industry, we're adjacent, we work together, different sides of the same coin. Is
Mhm.
there's a lot of conversation and talk about, well, the best time to buy is when you're ready and able, and
Mhm.
that if you are able to afford it and you can make the move, then
Mhm.
like, don't wait if you don't have
Mhm.
to, for a number of reasons. We could talk about
Absolutely.
missed opportunities of appreciation that adds to the net
Mhm.
worth as a financial, as a financial folder of your
Mhm.
portfolio. You've got the and the sheer fact that we're in a place right now where values are growing up again. So yesterday I was at a continuing education class taught by an appraiser, and he was telling us about what's happening and what he's seeing in the market. And this is a guy who does 30 to 60 appraisals every single month. So he's active in the market. He's seeing
Mhm.
everything that's going on from a variety of different price points and levels.
Mhm.
Whereas several months ago, we were at a peak and we were coming down. Well, now we're coming back, and he's starting to see this price growth again with as a trend with all of the different homes that he's appraising that are selling.
Mhm.
So you could miss out on the best price that you could get as things continue to go up. You're going to miss out on appreciation, so many other things. But
Mhm.
we're not just saying it because we want your money. It's literally because there's a time value of money as well and in your investment. So, um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I don't know what you think about that, but that's
I
kind of what goes
think
through my
I
mind.
I think appraisers are where it starts. And to hear an appraiser say that we're now on an upswing,
Mhm,
probably based on, September, October, November, December, I think that was kind of our lowest point for prices, just because we had a lot of stagnant inventory. Homes were
mhm,
taking 120 days to sell. Um, you know, I always tell clients that affordability is always going to be hardest on that first house.
yes.
So maybe right now you're paying an average of $2,500 a month in rent, and or combined, you're combining households with a partner. Yes, maybe it's $3,200 a month for your mortgage payment, but ultimately in 2 to 3 years when interest rates go down, you're going to have additional equity. You may be able
Mhm,
to refinance and get rid of mortgage insurance. You're going to maybe be able to access some of that equity for additional projects that you want to do, to put in some sweat equity to even build even more.
mhm,
The first home jump is always the hardest, and you and I have both done it. It's
mhm.
You look back and you think, how did I take on that house payment when I didn't even know what I didn't even know.
Yeah,
But ultimately it creates stability in your household, it creates stability in your community, which I think
yeah,
is huge. And so I think the bottom line is that if you can afford it, if it's snug, but you can definitely afford it, now's the time to do it, because there are people that didn't purchase in 2020 and now they're priced out of the market, and they may
mhm.
be looking for different markets. They may be moving south to a smaller market so they can get more affordability.
Right, Right. So
Mhm,
time is always of the essence.
mhm,
And then that's why it's so important that if you're concerned or curious about it, to have the conversation to get things started. There's
mhm,
never no obligation to have that call and just assess your financial situation. That's why you talk to
mhm,
folks like Jessica, because they will look at your whole financial picture and be able to tell you based on that what
mhm.
is going to make sense for you in your individual situation. This isn't 2008 time and before when, oh, okay, you say you make 10 grand a month. Great. Well, here's a loan for that when you only make 5,000. No, they're going to
Yeah,
things have changed so much in lending
they
since
have.
the crash that they're I would say they're fairly conservative in terms of what they will allow. Like they're very very
Yeah.
strict on looking into your financial history.
Absolutely. There's no longer, bank statement loans. There's no longer ninja loans, no income, no job approved.
Mhm.
we
Right.
we go through that whole process, and it's better to do it before you fall in love with a home or before you fall
Mhm.
in love with a community. It sometimes takes 30 or 60 days to maybe get everything together that you need to. If you're self employed, you absolutely want to do it before you file your taxes for the most current tax year. But you're right, it doesn't cost anything. My time is free to anybody that wants education on what getting into a home looks like or getting into an investment property. That's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I love
Yeah,
doing.
absolutely, and the same goes on my side too. I love having these conversations. I love the educational aspect. That's why I'm here. It's why I'm
Mhm.
doing this every week. But it is important because there's a as much as there is right now, we have more information than ever that people really have access to. They can
Mhm.
Google anything, they can get on YouTube and search videos, but sometimes just having a conversation with somebody that can walk you through the steps individually and you could ask that questions, have that back and forth conversation is really invaluable. And it really does, it does help people. It gives them some, I guess, some comfort in knowing what they could do individually. So,
Absolutely.
I guess that kinda
Absolutely.
covers, like, what to ex we're kind of already going into the topic of what buyers should expect in this market.
Yes.
So so we might as well just continue and come and come back to the other side of that next. But
Mhm.
yeah, so and so I guess that's kinda what we're talking about is if you're looking to buy a home this year in the coming next year or so,
Mhm.
what you can expect as a buyer. And so first of all, it's really if you're a year out, have that conversation now. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, absolutely. Talking a year out, getting a credit pull or a credit check just to make sure that if your score's at 680, you can purchase, but if it's at 700, you have access to better rates. Even if it's at
Mhm.
740, right now, Fannie and Freddie actually changed the loan level pricing basically based on the interest rate that you can get. And now you can go 760 or 800 and get a little bit better interest. So
That's
it's
great.
always about just making your picture as clean, as an organized as possible. So a year out is really crucial.
Yeah, absolutely, and I would agree with that, especially, um, I always encourage people on the agent side when they meet with an advisor that's gonna help them identify a property and enter into negotiations and or even help them find something that is off market. Oftentimes, a lot of people have a very specific need or they're looking in a very specific area,
Mhm.
um, to start having those conversations early because it often takes a long time to identify a property if you're
Yes.
going to task somebody like me with approaching a neighborhood and sending mailings and
Mhm.
things like that to try to identify people who are interested in making a move. And people don't just necessarily always make those decisions on a whim. It takes time. Like they're going to get something from me that says, "Hey, I have a buyer who wants to buy in your area."
Mhm.
They may call me right away, but they may hold on to that for 6 months before they say, "Hey, I was thinking about it."
Absolutely.
And
And
so yeah.
that's leveraging your network. And that's what I love about real estate agents that really understand what value they bring.
Mhm.
Value is knowing a neighborhood, knowing that a listing's coming on in 6 months, or that they want to move, but they really want to be non-contingent. So now you have a
Mhm.
buyer for their house. It's all kind of done off market. I think that's really important for clients to hear, because I think most people think, okay, I'm ready to go buy a house next weekend. Now's the time to talk to a real estate agent.
Mhm.
And it was really 6 to 12 months before that.
Yeah, 100%. And then you are in that case, you're entering that conversation, that negotiation, you're already kind of behind.
Yes.
And you haven't had a chance to watch the market and really get a feel for what it is you really are actually looking for. Because a
Yes.
lot of times those wants and needs that you have in a property, your negotiables and your non-negotiables, by the time you actually start looking and seeing these homes, those can change over
Mhm.
time. And so that's why it's important to start, getting property drips from properties that would potentially fit your needs. Um,
Absolutely.
and at a general price point that could make sense and in the area that you like, just to see what's happening. It could be where you're looking that there's not been any activity,
Yes.
and knowing that and that very little's going on, it's low turnover neighborhood, then we that's where you know that there's going to be a more intense search involved than just jump in the market 2 weeks and buy a house.
That's a great way to put it. The intensity when it comes to house buying, you're not just thinking about the mortgage and the down payment. You're thinking about schools, you're thinking about commutes, you're thinking about the
Mhm.
condition of the home. There's a lot of things that you can't change about a property. So you have to really nail down the ones that you can. And I feel like
Mhm.
when I talk to clients, it's going to be location, because that may be schools or commute. And then it's really about affordability. And so being able
Mhm.
to jump when you need to means doing the pre work. We call it pre approved for a reason.
Mhm. 100%. Yeah, and I noticed too that in certain neighborhoods, I mean, I think a buyer, they should be prepared for competitive situations
Hmm.
in price points that are, I would say, not necessarily the low end, but even the mid-range up to, I would say, 800 in certain neighborhoods
Absolutely.
especially. Um, I've seen if it's a cool property that's exciting to people and that's maybe hits the needs that you have, be
Hmm.
prepared for it to potentially be competitive with more than one buyer going after that property. And this is where a strategy session between not just your real estate agent, but your lender to talk
Hmm.
about how to make your offer the most attractive
Hmm.
to a seller, and having some strategies and some terms and conditions in mind that you could go into the bank, so to speak, and
Yeah.
pull out those things that can enhance your offer. Not always without going over asking price terribly, unless that's required. But then it's like we need to have the dream team, the lender and the real estate agent and the client, the buyer. We all need to be in communication and talking, because that's how we really are. That's how we shine for you and really make things happen. It's, three heads are better than one,
Yes.
essentially, when we're putting our energy together.
Yes.
So always having that creative energy and flexibility is
Yes.
awesome when it comes to these competitive situations, and thinking of unique ways to put a deal together that a seller's going to like.
Exactly. And I think the one thing that buyers don't necessarily think about in this market, but they should, is that taking that creativity and putting it really towards a property that maybe it's not distressed, but it kind of looks like your parents' house.
Mhm.
I think we have a
Mhm.
lot of those out there. It's a more dated kitchen, or it doesn't have the exact bonus room that you're looking for, or the man cave that you need. It doesn't have that updated landscaping so that you have that kind of like seasonal room that
Mhm.
everybody wants post COVID now.
Yeah.
But $5,000 or $10,000 of your down payment could be used towards that and
Sure.
could go really far. And that's the one thing that I talk to buyers about. If they have a sizable down payment put together, maybe we're not putting 20% down. Maybe we're putting 10% down. If you're selling a home and you need to get into a new home, you don't have to put all the funds towards that next house, because maybe it needs a little bit of a renovation in order
Mhm.
to get it to be the house that you want. If the location makes sense, and once again, the affordability makes sense, that's something that the three of us come together, we put our heads
Mhm.
together, craft a really fantastic offer, and kind of go into a purchase knowing that you're going to do some fun things to a house helps you
Mhm.
also feel like you're taking control of the house hunting process, don't you think?
I agree 100%. And it's a case by case basis, which is why when we're hunting, I like to send the properties to the lender so that
Hmm.
they know, because if a buyer loves that property, so buyers, if you like a property, you can send it to your lender, or I can send it, your agent, whoever can send it to the lender, and then they'll see it, and then if it comes down to it, they've kind of got a little bit of a head start. And in a
Hmm.
competitive situation, sometimes you don't have the luxury of a lot of time to think about it. And I don't I and it which I don't like the idea of that being the case. I don't like the idea of somebody not being able to see a property and really think on it, but
Hmm.
I mean, especially as we're in the spring market right now, and I don't know what the future holds if we do indeed have this housing shortage that's coming in the next couple years.
Hmm.
Um, given what we talked about a little bit ago, but I'd be prepared to look as much as you can online, be very intentional with the showing when you go see the property yourself, and
Hmm.
be prepared to have conversations and pros and cons right away, just in case, because time is always of the essence and you don't want to wait too long.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I feel like we're kind of going a little bit back to that right now where things are moving more quickly.
They absolutely are. And I think it as a lender, I always tell people like I'm the hard part. I'm the one that's asking for the financial docs and really kind of making you slow down to say what's your comfort level on payment? What's your ultimate financial goal? And then you guys go out and you look at all the houses. That's the fun part. But like you
Hmm.
said, sending a property to a lender and saying, I love this house. What if I had to go $15,000 above, but I got a seller concession? What would that look like?
Hmm.
Or what if I am only putting down 5% because I know that there's going to be a kitchen that I want to renovate? Those are
Hmm.
numbers that are pretty quick to get, and they're really specific to you and your situation. You can look at a lot of different mortgage calculators out there on the internet, but they're not really going to show you what's the mortgage insurance if you have that, or what's the interest rate today based on what we've already discussed. So
Hmm.
I love
Yeah,
that part of it because when you're making a house purchase, you really want to make sure that you're going through all your due diligence, and that's not just inspections, radon, and sewer lines and things like that. It's really making sure that it fits your entire financial picture.
100%. 100%. So at the end of the day, buyers, pre-approval is important. Who you
Hmm.
work with is important. So assemble your dream team uh, for your home search, and have conversations early and start planning ahead earlier than you even think.
Hmm.
That's 6, 9, 12 months in advance. I know there's things that come up like job relocations, that things happen quickly. That's just the fact of life, right? But if you're making a move and you're not intending to have that happen in your life, it's a fair bet to say 6 to 12 months in advance you should be having these conversations and getting all the nuts and bolts ironed out, starting to watch the market, getting a feel for what types of properties actually fit your needs and what you're actually looking for, so that
Hmm.
when you are ready and you do start hunting, and if it is competitive, you already know what you're looking for. You already
Hmm.
know when you see a house if it's going to be a right fit. So then you can move quickly, and you know
Hmm.
what it's going to take, and you know the numbers. And can't stress the importance, even in it's slower. It's still important to be in that position because your time will not be wasted. You'll be efficient, and you have a higher likelihood of finding exactly what you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
So there you have it, folks. So I want to know what you think. Leave a comment. Um, if we missed anything as a buyer, do you think we've missed anything on that list? Let us know. Leave us a comment. Would love to hear your thoughts. So we have another thing we want to talk about that came from that KFA Summit, which was
Hmm.
so it's really in that vein of, and anybody who watches the news or reads the news or follows any, and I'm not talking politics like red versus blue. I'm talking, you just know what's happening with what's passed in the states, and
Hmm.
especially on the West Coast. But this comes from the lane of so goes Washington or California, also then so goes Oregon. So
Hmm.
what there was something talked about at the KFA Summit that we thought was really interesting to share with folks, because it could be something that we see in the state of Oregon, knowing that trend. Um, that tends to happen with the West Coast here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Jessica, why don't you enlighten us with that? Because this is a really interesting piece of information.
It was. So the what Washington enacted, and I believe it was voted on in 2023, and they have until I believe August or September of 2024 to really put it into place, is that Washington building codes are requiring more energy efficient, just entire fixtures. So it could be more energy efficient furnaces, doing mini splits instead of forced air heat, in additional insulation, upgraded electrical. There's just a lot of efficiencies that make a home more affordable to run for years and years to come. However, a lot of these energy efficient codes will require builders to then take on additional costs. On average, it could be up to $15,000 per unit. And that's not high
Wow.
end units, Jen. That's like any unit that is being built. So just imagine if you're out looking for a new home now, you're looking at new construction, they're already very energy efficient. But the price you think maybe is a little bit higher will come August or September, you're actually going to see those prices jump up so that the builder can recoup some of that cost. Um, to me, it, of course, like we said, it always makes sense to buy earlier if you can, if the
Hmm.
affordability is there. But now, even more so, because you're going to gain that $15,000 in equity if you're into the neighborhood sooner than the person down the street would be.
Sure. And it's interesting because you think, well, gosh, it can't really be that simple of,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not just going to naturally gain $15,000 in equity just like that. But the thing is, builders, just like anything, there's a anytime they're taking on a cost, they just don't cut their bottom line. A lot of times these builds, they're not on the margins that you think. They're not making as much money as you think they're making.
Totally.
By the time they pay for everything. And so anytime these costs happen, they don't just eat it and just say, "Well,
Yep.
that's it. We're not going to pass that along." And maybe some will, I don't know, but anytime things like that happen, it always gets passed down to the consumer. Consumers always end up paying that bill one way or another.
Absolutely.
And and so interesting to think that so that's happening.
Mhm.
And it'll be interesting to see if that happens here in Oregon too,
Mhm.
and what that could look like. I know that city of Portland, there's when you sell a house, you have to fill out an energy efficiency
Mhm.
um, audit, so to speak,
Yes.
and attach that to the listing, just to show how energy efficient a home is. And I feel like new construction, all the stuff I've been in, they've talked about the um, gosh, what is it called? The R factor. It's like the insulation is the
Oh,
R
yes.
factor. Yeah,
R
it's
Factor, I
R
think.
factor. Yes, thank
Mhm.
you. It was just right at
Mhm.
the tip of my tongue. And so they talk about how they go above and beyond the standard
Mhm.
in all of that, and how the different things that they do to assure that a home is efficient. And I, I mean, I just sold a new construction townhome that closed last month, and I
Mhm.
remember walking through. The builder was talking about all the various things that they do to make sure these homes are energy efficient, and so they're already doing that. So it's
Yeah.
interesting to think this is already happening. So it's in like why this extra layer of complexity and another hurdle
Yes.
that continues to happen. And it's
Yes.
a frustration because we get this concern wholesale, West Coast, across the country, everywhere. But
Mhm.
we hear about a lot here is that there's no affordable housing. How come housing is so expensive?
Mhm.
Well, housing is expensive because we continue to add costs and burdens on the people who are there to build. And by the time they accrue all of these expenses to build these affordable houses, it's cost prohibitive for them to even consider it. So then it becomes a mid-level home rather than something that could be more affordable because of the bureaucracy and the permitting and the time and the energy and how difficult it is to navigate.
Mhm.
They're not going to do that for free. You and I
No.
don't work for free, and I would bet nobody else would either if they've got bills to pay. So,
Correct.
I don't know. I guess
So true.
I guess I fail to understand why we need this extra level of permitting and cost when a lot of builders are already doing that because that's what consumers want. Consumers want the
Exactly.
energy efficiency because nobody wants to pay more for their energy bill either. So
No.
I just don't understand that thought process.
I wish I understood it as well too. I know that in Portland, there's different opportunity zones. So if you're building and you're doing affordable housing in specific zones that are essentially typically underserved markets for home ownership. So maybe it's an area of the city that typically is more rentals or more apartment buildings.
Mhm.
They want to encourage home ownership because once again, home ownership builds community. It builds ownership of that neighborhood and of the development of it, and just knowing your neighbors, building a community around you. So Portland has these opportunity zones that builders can then apply for grants to essentially remove a lot of these permitting fees for them so that they can then pass that cost savings along to the buyer.
Mhm.
But I think you're right. I think it goes back to like, why do we need these excessive permitting fees in order to build affordable homes when really affordable housing comes from having a good stock of apartments, single family homes,
Mhm.
townhomes, multi-units, larger homes, smaller homes. We just need more of them, and we need to loosen up, I think, some of these building permitting ideals so that we can entrust the builders to do what's right for the community, because a builder
Sure.
truly, like you said, they want to give the consumer what they want. They want to have a master on main, they want to have energy efficiency, they want to be able to do, very easy long lasting finishes, but all of that comes at a cost, and we have to make
Yeah.
sure that we're still providing for people.
Absolutely. And a variety is important because there's a variety of needs. There's
Mhm.
people who need to rent. There's no shame in renting, but we
Yep.
need to make sure that people who need to rent have access to places that they can afford to rent. If
Yes.
people want to buy at whatever level their entry is to into home ownership, we need
Mhm.
a variety of housing that is available and affordable for that, whatever that looks like, for what entry is for a number of different people. And
Absolutely.
and I as it's interesting too, because I go back to a while back, I went to the city of Canby, the State of the City address where the mayor spoke during the Chamber of Commerce, and he talked
Mhm.
about one of the things that is a holdup is the cost of infrastructure. So not
Mhm.
just the permits, we talk about affordable housing and
Mhm.
all these things that go
Mhm.
into it, the actual cost of developing infrastructure. So that's streets and sewers and the various things that need to happen anytime you're adding
Absolutely.
new units to an
Mhm.
area. The cost to do that is so enormous that there's also that aspect that to pay for
Yeah.
that,
Mhm.
um, then that starts to chip away at an affordable, like an idea, something that I mean, and affordable is so subjective too, but
It is.
I I think we have a good idea of what it could look like on a like a scale, like a spectrum, so to speak. But
Yes.
there's so many things. And then they just keep adding to it with the idea of, I don't know if it's a look what we did because we want to show we did something and we achieved something. Is it
Mhm.
going to really help people? Is the end result of what they've done actually going to cause significant change that will make people's lives better when these efforts were already happening? When builders
Absolutely.
were already doing this, and now we're adding yet another potential cost burden. And then what happens next? What's the next cost burden that's going to continue to make these housing units continue to just be more and more expensive? I don't think that
Exactly.
there's been enough conversation to address that. There's a lot of other things that have been pointed to affordable housing, but how about we look at where the base level for development? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my 2 cents. I can get off my soapbox, but, leave me a comment.
I'm right up there with you. Yeah, I think that soapbox is really important, and it needs to
Yeah.
be a bigger part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I will say kudos to you. Um, Going to something like State of the City, listening to the governor speak, listening to state representatives speak, that's
Mhm.
another part of adding value to
Mm.
your client base and to your sphere. We have to know what's happening. We have to
Mhm.
know if a big bill is coming up. We need to be able to understand both sides of it. Like you said, this isn't about red or blue. This is about building up our community,
Yeah.
helping keep housing affordable in a state that we love and that we want to see success. We want to see success in our communities.
Absolutely. And that means I want to see people of all financial ability be able to buy a
Yes.
property, because you and I both know that anybody who owns a property, owns a home, even if it's their single family home that they intend to live in, and it's their forever home because that's what they can afford to buy.
Mhm.
I want to see that happen because we know that those people that buy property have, I don't remember I'll probably get it wrong, but let's just say for the sake of an estimation, I think it's like
Mhm.
40% higher net worth than somebody
Mhm.
who doesn't. So just think
Absolutely.
about that. That for a lot of people on a lower income spectrum, their access to homeownership can change the direction of their generational wealth for their family. And that is so impactful. And that's why this
Yeah.
conversation is so important as to why we continue to add layers of complexity. It just makes it more and more out of reach for those people whose lives could be most impacted by the positive effects of owning a property.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Homeownership is where it starts. It's the first
Hmm.
rung on building wealth. And when we say wealth, it's not about being wealthy or, rolling around in an expensive car. It's about financial security
Hmm.
and being able to take care of your family and your people in whatever form that looks like.
100%. And we know too that owning a home is a great hedge against inflation. And if that's not something that's been happening recently, it's nice to know that for the most part, other than your taxes or insurance bill changing, your property, your insurance and principal on your mortgage is going to stay the same. It's
Exactly.
always going to be consistent. So while everything else goes up, that payment's going to stay pretty darn close to the same every single month. So
Exactly.
yeah, so much to talk about about this. Leave us a comment. Would love to know your thoughts about this, and maybe you have an opinion or something to bring to the table to this that we missed. But definitely leave me a comment and share your thoughts about this and how these things get passed and why they do, and if they even add value to our lives as people. If it really is, it's really helpful.
Mhm.
Um, so I yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. We'll see. Maybe
Yes.
Oregon won't have anything like that happen. I do know the governor has her major affordable housing push that she's working on,
Yes.
and so it'll be interesting to see what that shakes out to be like as well.
Mhm.
So,
Definitely.
all right. Well, Jessica, in closing, I
Mhm.
thought just to have some fun, take away from some of these these serious
Our
topics,
heavy topics that we had
heavy
today.
topics today: housing shortage, affordability, access to affordable housing. Like, gosh, it's really not that negative out there, but
It's really
it's
not.
it's a reality. And the thing is that all these things can be navigated. Again, that's why
Mhm.
you need your dream team. You need a team of qualified people who
Mhm.
are going to be able to help you navigate these situations, because they are people. Even in the crash years, thousands of homes sold every single day that weren't necessarily in a foreclosure or short sale. Business still happens in a recessionary period, in an inflationary period. And it's just a matter of having the right people that have your back and can guide you through that process. So there's a lot of
Definitely.
positives, but it's just this is the reality, and we're here to help you navigate it. So,
Mhm.
um, okay, but so on a more less serious note,
All right.
how about a little bit of real estate would you rather?
Let's
So
do it.
yeah, so this is just for fun, and it's basically saying, and as a real estate agent, I like to see I've seen it all. I've seen a lot of I've seen hoarder situations. I've seen homes that were just really in bad shape, and I've
Mhm.
seen some really incredible properties as well, and kind of the runs the gamut in between. So,
Mhm.
this is just kind of a fun game of kind of unhinged things. Like, we'll build up to the like normal, up to some more unhinged. Um,
Great.
so Jessica, would you rather live in a single story or a two-story house?
Single story. I love a rambler.
Yeah. Yeah. More and more, having had two-story houses, our last two houses, I'm like, I kind of appreciate a single story.
Yes,
I kind of
absolutely.
I can agree with that. Although a two-story, I will say, having like a bonus room upstairs that I can just like send the kids to just
Yes.
be just whatever they're going to be. Just go up there and to cause chaos in another story of the house. It's kind of
Yes,
nice. So,
exactly.
but I think our forever home, should we have the chance to build it, would be a single story for sure.
Definitely. Single story.
Here's another one. A single, two-story, or a split level? Would you go for that vintage split level where you go in, you have the choice, you can go down or up? Like that
Mhm.
70s style. They did that a little in the 80s too.
Yeah, so I was raised in a split level. It couldn't have been more Midwestern suburb. I think it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different levels, right? They
Oh
were
my
all just
gosh.
half levels.
What is the
And
word for that? Because there's like like split level, tri level. Is that like
like
a, it's like quin level, like
a quit
quintuple? Like
level.
what is that? Five different levels.
It was,
Creative.
I think it would give me a lot of nostalgia to do that. But the only downside, if you were raised in a split level like that, is that your every single piece of woodwork that was on that staircase just had hand marks, permanent hand marks of kids just like running up and
Yeah.
down it. You can picture it.
Uh-huh.
But I definitely loved that odd 70s split level.
And I love a house that has a vibe in these mid-century or these like quirky houses. I
Yes.
I tend to love them. And they're weird. You've got like the conversation areas and you got random platforms and like they're so quirky, but I don't know what it is. I think it's character. I actually find some of the newer open concept houses to be boring in a sense because it's just like a big open space. Well, okay, so now what do I do with this? Um, and it's kind of interesting that they accounted for these different places where you could have your conversation area where you have people over and your kitchen's over here and your dining room. You've got these different places in a house. And I think after COVID, I think more people are going for that
I
because
think so.
you realize you need some spaces when you're together
Yes.
all the time.
Yes. And
Yes.
everybody has, in our house, everybody has a different spot. Even the dog has a spot where, if she's wanting to chill, it's this spot. If she's wanting to see what's happening, it's this spot. And
Yeah.
I think that a lot of homes that were built, in the 70s and the 80s, just they had all those little quirky spots. And to me, I love that part. Give me quirk. Give me character.
Totally. I love it. Me too. I'm with you. Okay, so we can agree on that. There's only 2 houses available for you to buy. And
Okay.
and
And I have
here's
to buy one.
you have to buy one of these houses.
Okay.
You have severe foundation damage to choose from in house A, and in
Okay.
house B, you have severe amount of mold. Which house do you pick?
I'm taking the moldy house.
You're taking the moldy
I'm
house.
taking the
Okay.
moldy house, and that's even from someone who's mildly allergic to mold and moss and, like, organic growth. Oregon's a great place to live, by the way, in the spring for
Right,
that
right.
allergy. But foundation issues, I've actually almost purchased a house twice that had foundation issues, and once you hear that, there are companies out there, and they're very reputable companies that can take care of that. But that is a big ticket item, and more often than not, you'll hear contractors say, "We can fix it," but really, this is more of like a renovation, almost tear down to get it done. So,
Mhm.
mold that can be remediated. It's actually usually pretty inexpensive, and if all else fails, you're just cutting out drywall, you're cutting out
Mhm.
subflooring, and you're putting in new things. So I feel like
Sure.
I could live comfortably in a mold house.
Sure. Sure. I think yeah, gosh. That's a tough one. It's very unhinged. You only have
What
those
would
2
you
choices.
do?
Oh my gosh. I it's funny because I'm inclined to go foundation. The
Really?
foundation house. Yes, because I there's a house that I lived in once upon a time
Mhm.
that had black mold that would come through the walls and it would
Mm.
seep through
Oh my
and
gosh.
it gets into everything. It's in
Yeah.
your like you smell it in your clothes. Like if you leave
Mhm.
something hanging to dry in the house too
Mhm.
long and it stays wet like on a clothesline, like,
Ugh.
it would get everything gets moldy, and so to a point, I'm like, "You bet you could remediate that," but, in a sense, I feel like that's almost just as much of a tear down
Yeah.
as if you have a foundation issue, And maybe with the foundation issue, you could fix it for the short term and kind of kick the can down the road a little bit, kick the
Totally.
ball down
Yep.
the field and deal with it a little bit further with a full reno later. But I
Mhm.
don't know. I feel like I'd much rather deal with the foundation damage because, in
Mhm.
my eyes, knowing the severity of the house that I lived in, I feel like it's going to be 6 to one half dozen of the other on cost by the
It's
time you
true.
figure it. And I'd much rather not have to deal with organic growth of any kind.
Sickness. Definitely sickness. I think that that's the
Yeah.
hardest part. When your home makes you sick,
Yeah.
you can't get around that. So,
Right. And of
mhm,
course, this is personal preference.
mhm,
It's not advising anybody, of course. But I
absolutely.
mean, if it was me buying it for myself, everybody's got different tolerances.
Mhm.
So let's see, what do we got here? We've got a house that has a really janky hot tub that could be cleaned and
Oh.
used, or a really
Mhm.
janky pool that,
Oh.
like an in-ground pool, that they both have water in them.
Okay.
They haven't been used in a while. Would you rather have the janky hot tub or the janky pool? And leave us a comment too. If
Mhm.
you have an opinion of what you would rather have in this game of Would You Rather, leave us a comment. I would love to know what you think about our unhinged choices.
You know what? I'm picking pool, and I'm picking pool because I have a lab. And if she knew
Yes.
that there were an option in which we could have a pool and she could swim on a daily basis,
Yeah.
regardless of the condition of the pool, she would want that.
Yeah.
But I also know that's a big ticket item to get renovated or possibly
The
replaced, or maybe you're
maintenance.
filling it in.
Yes.
It's a six-figure project, I would think,
Hmm.
at most levels. So,
I know. And that's where my head goes. Is you got
mhm.
the janky pool. Well, what's under the water by the time you drain it and like deal with it? Like, I don't
Yes,
know. I
yes.
and mosquito, I don't know. Gross. I think I would take janky hot tub because if it turns out that thing is just too janky to be used again, you can get rid of
Just
that
throw it
thing.
out.
Just
Yep,
toss it. I mean, it'll be a
true.
pain to get rid of, but it's like, "Oh, okay, so I don't have a hot tub now." You could, from a I've seen some really janky hot tubs
It amazes
on
me some
showings.
of the hot tubs, yeah, that you see in
Yeah,
listings, and, is it personal property or is it not personal property?
I
It's a
know.
great question as well too. If it's built in, you hope it
Yeah.
kinda comes with it, but a hot tub is pretty nice to have almost year round in
Yeah.
Oregon. So
Yeah.
I wish I had a backyard that I could fit a hot tub in. I think
Totally.
in the meantime, I would just buy one of the Costco, like, blow up ones.
Yeah, yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay, and so our final unhinged real estate would you rather question.
Mhm.
Would you rather have the cat pee house? You know the one. You walk in and every corner of that house
Yes.
has cat pee. Like
Mhm.
walls, subfloor, like it's
Mhm.
everywhere. Or would you rather have the house that has had excessive amounts of cigarette smoke for 30 years, where the walls are yellow and
Yeah.
no amount of kills, nothing is going to get rid of that nicotine cigarette
Oh.
smoke
Mhm.
residue in that house. Which of those two unhinged options would you pick?
I don't know. Oh my gosh. So on one hand, nicotine and cigarette smoke is just permeates everything, and I
Mhm.
think you're probably getting rid of all the drywall in the entire home, which
Mhm.
at that point, I love a good renovation. I've renovated multiple houses. To
Mhm.
me, that might be a fun thing to take on. Um, cat pee. Am I buying it in the heat of summer? Because if I'm buying it in the heat of summer and this is the worst it's going to be and I can fix it so that it's gone, I would probably take that. But I think what people forget is that those smells, they do change with the year. And so
Mhm.
I'm
And
going to
same with
go with
cigarettes.
that.
I Yeah,
Yeah.
same with cigarette smoke because when it's hot, I mean, even if you go through and you repaint and, primer, paint, you use Kills or whatever, and you
Mhm,
run the ozone machine,
mhm,
and allegedly there's some companies out there that can come in and, like, spray some chemical in your house that gets rid of that smell. I still
mhm.
feel like hot times of year, you're still gonna smell the cigarette smoke pretty
Oh,
intensely.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. And I just don't think that we really understand how bad or we do know now. We know now
Mhm.
how bad smoking is for you. I don't think we understood how bad it was in the 70s and the 80s to smoke
Right.
inside. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't think of a single person that smokes in Oregon, let alone in their home.
Right. Right. I
So
know, and how things have changed so much, but
so I'm going with the
yeah.
cat fee because you can just take
Yeah.
out that subfloor. Maybe you're
Yeah.
taking out subflooring and maybe some of the lower part of the drywall, and then you're still kilzing and ozoning. But I
Yeah.
think you can really get rid of that cat pee smell. I
Yeah.
hope.
I'm I'm team cat pee house as
Okay,
well.
good.
Nobody likes the idea of either, but again, we have 2 houses to buy, and that's all that's left, and we gotta buy one. Which one are we gonna pick?
No,
I'm gonna
no,
have to go cat pee
absolutely.
house. What do you think? People, comment. Cat pee
Yeah.
house or cigarette smoke? Would love to know.
Yes.
So anyway, Jessica, it has been a joy having you as part of Real Estate Recess today. Thank you for taking the time to come on here and
Mhm.
talk about these topics with me today. You can find Jessica at Jessica Homelender on Instagram or send her an email, jessicas@cmgfi.com. Other than that, thanks for watching. Remember to like this video, hit the bell to be notified when I'm on here again. Maybe even subscribe. Would love to have you be part of this community. But
Mhm.
again, I'm Jennifer Schurter, and I'm a real estate expert here in the Clackamas County and North Willamette Valley areas. And if you're looking to make a move in this part of the world, I hope you'll look me up. And I will see you next Thursday for another episode of Real Estate Recess. Have a fantastic week.
Thanks, guys.